Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of VNture Podcast with your hosts, MR and Taros. It's that time of the month for us to cover our Readports, what visual novels we have been reading the past month, and our thoughts and our experiences, and perhaps our future expectations. Thank you all for joining us again, and let's get right into it. MR, what have you been reading this past month?
I have no idea
Ah,
how excited I am to record this episode because it is rarely I go in with such a high praise for a title I just finished and a title I just picked up. But let's start things with 99. I've recently finished reading 99, and to recap, the last time I spoke on Readport, I was close to finishing episode 1. Maybe I started episode 2, something around that time.
yes.
On the last report. Now I was busy with some real life things, but when I got back, ready to read, I almost read episode 2 through 4 in 2 days. It was that engaging.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was really nice.
You blitzed through, I want to say, I guess 3 episodic titles?
Let's say 2.5, because
Okay.
I wasn't at the start of 2. I was maybe more in the middle, but 2.5 is reasonable to say. And I also finished the 5th entry as well, day after.
Okay, which that one's more of a fan disc, right?
Oh, I'll get into that, Taurus.
Oh,
I'll
man.
get to that.
Oh, you got plenty. Okay, so what do you want to tell us about the 99 series?
It is so hard to talk about it without spoilers, okay? So I'll try to skirt around some things that I feel like are really cool to experience. First and foremost, let's start with something I expressed as a clear dislike of episode 1. Is I disliked how they do choices. But by the start of episode 2, I had a thesis of why they do it and where they're going with it, and that turned out to be completely true. And I like what they did with that. So, while the episode first choices felt really bad, left a bad aftertaste, I felt like they wasted my time unnecessarily. So, what they did with that, moving forward, is so much better. Because this is a linear story, it is episodic story. You cannot do choices other than there is a correct order of choices, right? You have to lead with a canonic ending. It doesn't make sense otherwise.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to skirt around some spoilers potential, right?
Okay.
But ultimately, if you think about episodic stories, they have to build upon the previous ones in some way, shape, or form. So ultimately, there will be a division of choices that are either irrelevant or that are not correct.
Okay.
And by proxy, relevant. But that's why I really didn't like how they did it in episode 1. And funnily enough, the way they ended episode is very important, because every single time an episode ended, I did not felt as it was a cliffhanger. While it wasn't that important right now because I had access to all of them, I imagine if I were to read it on the release, I would not be as annoyed as I was with some episodic releases, be it an anime, manga, or whatever. That's why I steer clear of any episode. I like to read finished product.
Okay.
And given that, I think how they ended episodes were okay. I would have no problems reading this on the day of release.
Okay, so that's good. So I'm assuming each episode was a sort of self-contained story that left more questions when it finished at the end.
Yeah, it definitely posed some questions, and you definitely had a lot to work with to untangle the mystery. And just a quick recap, probably I should have started with that. 9-9 is story about murder mystery. That's all you know. Something happened, someone got killed, and there's superpowers involved. Go.
Okay.
Again, not to divulge too much. It's really interesting. I specifically chose screenshots that capture one peculiar thing throughout the entire experience is how characters have inflated egos in some ways. Them being teenagers and or high school characters or whatever with superpowers, a lot of them are like, yes, my superpower is invincible. Almost everybody says so. And they are not so invincible. Let me say it like that. But it makes for entertaining read.
Aha, okay.
One of the dialogues that really impressed me, that when they were faced with challenges during the investigations, finally someone said, beware of adults because they are crafty. I'm like, fine. Oh my god, obviously. At the very least, they acknowledge that.
Yeah, and they all those teenage superhero stories with adults mysteriously incompetent or missing.
Yeah, yep. That is not the case. So it's good that some of those people finally admitted to be careful around adults. In addition to be careful about your own ego, or else you'll be put in a very bad situation if you think your superpower is the one that is invincible.
Okay. So I do want to ask, if you're done with this topic, this aspect of 9-9.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
go for it.
A lot of the screenshots you posted here that are scrolling in the background seem to be pretty slice of lifey, with friends hanging out and cute girls and whatnot. Yeah. And you mentioned that there's a murder mystery and that there's superpower and fight scenes. And so I'm wondering, is 9-9 kind of like a visual novel with two halves? Is it just kind where there's still a lot of joy to be found in the little peaceful moments in between all the fight scenes, or did you like those more? Or basically, just elaborate more on that.
Yeah, it definitely takes inspiration from Fate Stay Night's division of during the day, it's mostly peaceful. We go to restaurant, we mingle with our team, and during the night, stuff happens. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely that kind of distinction when the shit gets real. Let's call it during mostly night, but that's not necessarily the rule. And during the day, it's mostly peaceful. They go to school, or on days off, they go to shopping centers or something like that.
Because because in Fate Stay Night, that's usually one of the complaints about it, is that people don't really want to hear all about the intricate cooking scenes and stuff. They want to see the superpower figments from human mythology duking it out in epic battles. And so I'm wondering, is that the same, or did you personally enjoy them, or?
I don't rate the day-night cycle of Fate Stay Night as a complaint. I would not complain on that. Although, to be frank, the cooking episode kind of pushed it sometimes. There's a lot of that. But the fact that they went on to school to investigate, to plan ahead, was something fine in Fate. And this is the same here. A lot of the time they try to get information. They try to increase their web of influence around characters they know, characters they don't know about, and situation they put themselves in. Like, I feel the pacing is fine. They didn't have the problem neither with Fate. Okay, cooking was sometimes annoying, but ultimately I didn't have that much problem with Fate, and I didn't have that much problem with 9-9. Now, if I were in a position of someone who really disliked the day-night cycle of Fate, would that be the same case here? Especially earlier episodes would have that more. I feel like now that I finished the entire series, right? now I understand why a lot of people say, oh, first is kind of slow read, the next one are better. Because the first characters introduced is the most, yes, let me cook for you kind of deal. And there's a lot of that. In addition to setting up the world, how the superpowers work, where they are from, etc., etc.
Okay.
So definitely I can see why it comes from that. On the second, since you're familiar with all those content from the first and it builds upon all of that, it goes more into, okay, this is the facts, this is what we don't know, this is what we know, let's review it, let's find who did it. And then you get introduced into more characters that are involved in the story throughout that. So it's less about the let's make friends and cook together some meal kind of deal.
I see.
I am really trying not to spoil any surprises for anybody, but pretty early on it's established that there is two things. There is an anime that is strangely related to a folklore of this city that is also strangely related to superpower and their peculiar situation. So first aspect that 99 explores is throughout lenses of those characters you look at the in-world anime that talks about the in-world folklore, about the shrine and whatever happened there. That relates to the current situation in the murder mystery that is going on and the superpowers being landed to characters.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's one part. And the second part, because there's a lot of fans of that anime that are very invested.
Okay.
And among those fans of the series, other superpowered users are hiding. And the information gathering is how to fish out who's the real deal of the forum. Like that's a pretty interesting take. Yes, I could imagine so. If anime is popular enough, it gathers fans. And I would imagine so. It's easy to camouflage yourself in a wave of fans because you can roleplay as if you were having those superpowers from the show, and maybe you do, right? That's an interesting concept.
Okay.
And among those characters that exist in the forum, one, I just have to say it, one guy is just the best guy because he's so lost. He's such a tunibio. He's so passionate about it. His persona eludes I am the otaku manifested. And he calls himself a commander. And he's the best character. I just love every single time he's speaking is just full of joy to me. Even the way he befriends people is just crazy. The first time he gathers people interested in anime, he said, oh, this is the perfect time to bond. And what's the better bond than to eat French fries together? Let's go. Like, what? What are you talking about? He's so earnest in that. And when there's one character, no, sorry, today I can't go to the dinner. He's so crestfallen. He's like, an excuse to eat dinner ruined. I feel like even the voice actor had so much fun voicing this guy because there's one favorite quote of mine. This is during the day. They're contacting each other of what to investigate later, who to talk with, who to meet up, who to try to investigate whether or not they're legit superpowered users. And he goes to them and he says, yeah, I have an egg sandwich that I bought. And he does it in the most hilarious way. It's like, oh, this egg sandwich is delicious. He did the most evil laughter possible. I was dying laughing at that scene. And every single time he went overboard on every single thing. I can listen to that guy forever.
He's the comedy guy. Even though he might not be
Even
trying to be funny, but everything he
He-
does is very humorous and charismatic.
Yeah, he's not even that comedic relief, but the way he delivers is just so perfect. The way protagonist maintained his group, right, is he wanted a sense of unity, which just makes sense. They created a group and they named themselves the Valhalla Society. For some reason, because there's one character on their team that really liked that name when she was a kid. So she proposed, I'm the leader, this is Valhalla Society. Protagonist is like, what? Val what? And the commander is like, Valhalla Society. I knew the day would come. You sound like a good opportunity to unveil my own team, the Rig Veda. Like, what are they talking about? They're on a different level. Oh, man. I love the series. So again, I'm specifically not mentioning the main story, and I'm specifically focusing on an aspect of revealing the identities, because I feel like this is the most closely related to Fate, to be frank. Everybody tries to maintain secrecy of whether or not they do have superpowers, and if they get exposed, what do those superpowers do? Because it's not easy to reverse engineer how they work. Because very easily on you have the very first superpower you know of is stealing. That's it. Concept of stealing. But that's only because you thought it was stealing. Maybe it is so much more. The only thing you can work on is you lose possession of something. And that means stealing. But ultimately, maybe there's more to that. And every single character that appears with superpowers also has a concept that manifested. And whether or not it's easy to guess what their limitation is the tricky part.
Limitations.
Yeah, because I stole your phone. But what does it tell you about that superpower, since you lose the memory of the ownership itself?
Nothing really, I would assume.
Yeah, but wouldn't you remember that it was your phone?
I suppose. I mean, yes.
But with
If
this
I notice it's
power,
missing,
you will never remember it was
exactly
yours.
like you just said. But if there's a superpower that prevents it, then no, I wouldn't.
Yeah, but is it still stealing then?
I would say yes, but it'd be hard for the original owner to think it's stealing.
Yeah, but isn't stealing the act when someone knows? And
Whether or not
this
they
one-
remember doesn't change anything. It was theirs.
It's so weird because we bring definitions now. Because what if that superpower rewrites what has been, and it was always yours? It was never stolen.
We're getting into the. That's how we
Yeah,
know.
you see-
That's how we know this is comic book based. We start getting into the powers of I rewrite reality.
It's weird.
Okay,
But
okay.
It makes you question where's the limit and whether or not it's really stealing. Maybe it's borrowing. Maybe it's
Long-term borrowing
it's weird
with
but
no intention to give it back.
repossession, right?
Oh dear.
Involuntary repossession. Yeah. But I wanted to bring the attention to. I feel like, be it in mysteries and in here, oftentimes the most intriguing part isn't when you know the rules, but rather what you don't know about the rules. And for all bullshit you can say about Fate, the best plot twists were regarding the way how they broke the rules of the game. Those were the best plot twists. But because imagine how much less of a mystery it would be if they would stick to the rules ironclad throughout the entire story. It would not be that much of a plot twist. It would be a power level demeasurement. But that the idea behind Fate was that you want to be coy, that you want to be very witty, and you want to, whenever possible, break the rules. And similarly in 9-9, those powers aren't that well defined, or rather, maybe the conclusions you get from witnessing them is flawed in some way. It's really intriguing. I like it. Although, and again, I'm not saying that to prop myself as some sort of big brain person, but I guessed all the plot twists pretty much.
Okay.
I posted a theory early on in episode 2, and that was pretty much confirmed by the end. Yeah, I was spot on. Although, for those in the know, I felt like they did a really good job with that approach. I felt like they tastefully approached that concept. And again, I'm not willing to spoil anything because I feel like this title was phenomenal. And the last point I wanted to bring, that I teased a little bit before, I feel this series in particular made an amazing fan disc. Holy fuck. I was impressed. Because a lot of the series, when it comes to fan discs, those are like extra stories, bonus content, an epilogue, something just, you can skip it, nothing would be lost. I feel like they did such a phenomenal job of tying the main story in addition to adding epilogue to every single character. This is the gold standard of what I want to see in my fan discs.
Okay. So there's a lot of good content in there.
Yeah, I was surprised because my baseline understanding of fan discs is like, oh yeah, this is like, oh, you like that character, you have her epilogue. You like this, yeah, you have that epilogue. No, the first thing they did is tie up all the loose ends, all the plot holes you found during the story, in my opinion, very neatly solved, and then you have the epilogues for all those characters. Yes, I want more of those fan discs. This is the way to do it.
Usually, fan discs have epilogues for the heroine routes, right? Yeah. Okay, so it's good that they did gave fans what they wanted.
Or another part for fan discs is like give a heroine that was a fan favorite, but they didn't have a route.
Yes.
Right. But they went with tie up loose ends first and foremost. So it's just interesting because I feel like you can still be satisfied by completely skipping the fan disc because the story wrapped up nicely. But there are some loose threads and answers that the fan disc covers really nicely and then expands on the epilogues. I feel like, yes, this is the way to do it.
Then wow.
As I said, ultimately, I really like that series.
Yeah, so I was about to say the glowing recommendation for the series. Okay, that's something to add to the backlog. Classic.
Yeah, and speaking of backlog, how was yours?
Yes. I've read a short pre-title called It Gets So Lonely Here. It was developed and written by the prolific Ebi Hime, who, has been an OELVN dev for 10 years now, still going strong. And yes, it's a relatively short VN. The main character is a girl fleeing in a dark, scary forest. And depending on how the story plays out, she connects with others in a lonely world. And then there are twists and turns and despair and triumph. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
One thing that really drew me to this title was the narration and the writing. Specifically, this is written in second-person narration. That's very rare. First person is when the story gets written like I went to the store and then I wondered what I would have for dinner. Third person is when it's, viewing from the outside, like MR went to the store and he thought to himself, I wonder what I'll have for dinner, that sort of thing. But second person is very rare when it goes, you went to the store and you wondered, what you'd have for dinner. Because it's aside from like the physical choose your own adventure books, there's no real way to tie that into a story well. But this is a title that did go for it, if you can see some of these screenshots running along in the background.
Yep.
And I thought it was done very well because the narrator of this story is not the main character. You get the feeling that the main character is obviously doing her part of the story of fleeing the forest, and then you have like a storyteller who's adding in their own mocking opinion of her plight.
It's so weird that whenever you describe it that way, I feel like does it feel like you're reading a VN with a commentator?
Honestly, it did very much feel like that. There was a commentator. How yes, of course, it's still the narration, and so you still get direct views of this main character fleeing through the woods and all her adventures. So you get descriptions of everything, but it does often remind you that there is, I guess you could say, a separate persona involved in this. It adds another layer to the story that you wonder, like, are things not as simple as they seem? It especially works out well because, if anyone's checked out Ebihime's other works, the writing in this is very flowery and descriptive. There's a flair to it. It reads very much like a, Victorian fairy tale storybook kind of setting, and I think it fits in very well, and it's very impressive to keep it up throughout the entire VN. And that lends this VN a certain kind of oppressive, dreary atmosphere. And one reason why I have to say I didn't care for this VN much is because just that dreary, heavy atmosphere is present all throughout the VN. If you know me, I really like plot-focused works. And there really isn't that much plot to this story. It has great decorations and a great flair, but it's really hard. Without going into too much detail, it's hard for me to sink my teeth into what goes on in this story, especially once you kind of get clued in as to how things are playing out. It's very hard for me to stay engaged. As much as I like the writing and the atmosphere, it's kind of a double-edged sword where it's just like, okay, well, I know what I'm going to look forward to for the next hour or two, and I'm not really all that excited to go through it.
I see. I mean, first and foremost, I wanted to go back to the Ebihime, because you mentioned that and the author, and I had to check it. In the meantime, I googled. Yeah, I read a title from that developer. It was The Way We All Go. I don't know if you're acquainted with that.
Oh, I'm familiar, yeah.
I really didn't gel with that title, I'll be honest. I think that what get to me is probably similar to what you're describing right now. And I think that the one thing that really made a sour impression on me is a lot of bad endings. If I remember, that title had a lot of bad endings.
Interesting. And that kind of turned you off just because you just didn't like seeing that kind of content or the atmosphere, or?
It's very hard to describe, but maybe let's try to say it another way. I don't shy away from a sad story or a dark setting or something like that, but I ultimately like good endings, and I don't wish upon characters bad endings for me to appreciate good ones. So whenever I feel like every single choice leads to, oh no, another depression, like, oh my god, when it gets good.
Aww.
Do you understand at least what the point I'm getting at?
I feel what you're getting at, yeah. And it's important because I just want to say that's my personal preference, and yours too. It's obviously, she's found a lot of success and she puts out so many titles and lots of people love it.
Yep.
And I'm very happy for them and for her. This didn't really gel with me either, except for the ending. I do want to give major props to the ending because not just because of how the story developed and how the characters especially developed, but there were also a few other cool technical aspects of the VN that, just like the second person narration, just like the writing, that really made a few scenes much more exciting than I thought they'd be. And so I do think this VN ended on a good note. I very much appreciated it, especially for being free and short. I thought this was a nice read.
Same. I mean, yeah, when it comes, especially comes to the free VNs, and I'm now trying to remember is The Way We All Go was also free. If you remember, I don't remember now, but yeah, it's a different beast to tackle. Because it's hard for me to judge harshly a title that was ultimately free. Mm-hmm. Even if I didn't gel with it ultimately, even if that wasn't the kind of story and the development that resonates with me, ultimately I can't be mad at it. It tried to do its best. And for those who enjoy it, right on.
Of
course. Have a blast.
The Way We All Go was not free. I just checked right now.
Okay.
Well, that's what the Steam page says anyways. But for something like this, it's like, the art is beautiful. Not just the backgrounds, but also the character designs and the art style too. It was very pretty to look at, and I enjoyed the music too. All in all, this was there's a lot to appreciate with this, and it kind of kills me a little inside. It was just like, I can't really get myself engrossed though. I'm so sad. Not until the end anyways. But if anyone...
Do you feel that the ending redeemed the title in your eyes? How would you describe it?
From a literary standpoint, absolutely. It did a great job of, tying together a few things going on, especially the themes and the, like I said, the characters. I'm a lot of OELVN devs love to include their development notes alongside the package. It happens a lot. So you get to see some of their inner thoughts and workings. And she didn't intend to include that. She thought she would have just stopped the story a bit earlier at a different point. And I was like, that would have hurt me deep inside if you just ended it there.
Aww. You would feel betrayed.
Yes. But as far as going back to, as for my enjoyment... I had, a few hours of kind of motivating myself to get through this. And so the question remains, if, a 10-minute ending or whatever is enough to make it all worthwhile, that's harder to ask. Personally, I don't know about that.
You know what I'm going to mention, because there's another title with an amazing ending, or rather final route, that is English original visual novel. Although it's about pigeons, and it's very hard to rational sometimes reading 13 routes before you get a good one.
Wait a second. It sounds like you're implying Hatoful Boyfriend's normal routes are bad.
They are not bad.
You're darn right they're not bad. They're fantastic.
But I wouldn't say fantastic, especially if you read them back to back. The repetition in some of those routes is not that engaging, especially given that, at the very least, the moment I read it, it did not have skip functionality.
Oh dear, oh no.
So, yeah.
Well. But still, as for the title I read for my Readport, It Gets So Lonely Here. I thought it was a very solid and very representative Ebihime work.
Nice. I mean, sadly, that doesn't really convince me to try the Ebihime works.
Poor MR.
Yeah. But speaking of titles I did want to read, and I did manage to finally start. Oh boy. Where do I even start? Where do I even start?
I don't know how you'll start, but you're going to have to end it very quickly.
Yeah, with Venus Blood Gaia. I just recently started that title. Oh, holy hell, do I have a blast with that title. There's so much to talk about, but a lot of it is familiar. If you played any Venus Blood, majority of themes here are common across the series, be it from gameplay side, and how gameplay has a feedback loop inside the story narrative. And the setting every single time is different. And this time, you are commanding a nation focused on technology. You have a technological supremacy nation, and you try to survive in a desolate world that is dying slowly and decaying. And you encounter different cultures, different tribes, different countries with their different values. A lot of them not very keen on newest technological advancements. And the aspect of morality is so warped across all the countries because every single one of them has something wrong, including your own. And it's so Venus blood, let me tell it like that.
What do you have any initial thoughts about the gameplay?
I like it, although, get them. My inner strategist did not allow me to start with normal difficulty. I had to start with hard. And I was almost completely pissed at the amount of times I lost on hard. And I decided, you know what? I cannot get angry. I want to see where the story goes. And I started normal.
Yeah, I know what that's like.
There are some intricacies about the gameplay that weren't intuitive to me at the start. Now I'm invested, I understand what I did wrong. So maybe I'll go back and play the new routes on the high difficulty. But yeah, so far I like the gameplay. It's an inversion of how the previous titles went. Whereas in the Venus Blood Frontier and Venus Blood Hollow, you were basically a conqueror and you were leading the invasion. Here you're playing always on the defensive. You're pretty much managing a dungeon, which is super funny to think about. You have a floating city that you bunker up into labyrinth mode and they storm you when you defend it. It's so weird.
Okay.
So fun.
Yes.
And again, I like how the gameplay complements the story and how the story ties in the morality, in which all the Venus Bloods are basically, you are playing the demon faction, the evil guy, right? But the world isn't really that good anyway, so everybody's sense of morality is super warped. In this case, you are kind of lack of manpower. So you use incubators to create people. That's not really nice. But then the first country you encounter uses human sacrifice. So are they any better?
No, just a whole bunch of shades of gray, huh? Everyone's a little bit evil. Okay,
exactly.
So MR, real quick, we barely got any time. Who's best girl so far?
Harpy. Harpy Merchant is absolutely the best.
Harpy Merchant?
Yeah.
Oh.
She's absolutely amazing. Listen, I prepared the entire scene to describe it to you, okay?
Oh dear.
Oh no, I'm so exhausted from all the sessions and training. The tentacles are really something else. How would a normal person manage? And then you have a libel. Wait, I have an idea. I'll make money using the tentacles. So she immediately has new money-making scheme in which she steals the supplies of tentacles from your laboratories, tries to peddle those to normal people, and the normal people are like, what the hell do I do tentacles for? Okay? Whatever. No one wants to buy the merchandise. So, because she's a bit of a klutz, she breaks one glass, makes a spectacle of it, and everybody buys the product. And she's like, I won, but did I really lose something? I love it. Every scene with her are just hilarious.
Aye. That's crazy.
Yes.
We'll have to see what more is in store for Venus Blood and MR in the future. And if your best girl ranking ever changes.
It actually might.
Ooh, we'll see. But thank you everyone for listening into our podcast. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you learned some more about the titles that we discussed as well.
Yep, and thanks for everybody for listening in. See you next week.
See you next week.